Okay, one more video for the day. So, a lot of discussion about states' rights and federal supremacy, immigration, what have you. Sheriffs resisting the federal government or threatening to, and the federal government threatening them. Who's right, who's wrong? Okay, so let's look at first off how I interpret the Constitution. Religiously, I believe that I have to go by what my prophets say first. And that what the prophets say is that the Constitution, the Lord established it by the hands of wise men whom he raised up for the purpose. So we need to look at the tradition of the founders. That's what David O. McKay said, as Jeff Benson said. And then also we need to look at it according to what the prophets and the scriptures have said about it, which is just straightforward. Basically, it's Jefferson and Madison, their view, which a lot of people call it a textualist view. In other words, the Constitution says what it says, doesn't say what it doesn't say, right? Text according to the original meaning. And I hate factions. I hate being called a textualist originalist, but let's go with that for now, I guess. And so also Ezra Taft Benson and Dallin H. Oaks. So the best information. They're really a lot like Jefferson and Madison all over again, if you ask me. The contrast between their character, which Jefferson and Madison worked awesome together. I find the Constitution a heavenly banner and defending our divinely inspired Constitution to work amazing together. And really, really nicely. Those are Ezra Taft Benson and Dallin H. Oaks. Anyhow, so what does the Constitution say? Well, first off, let's look at rules of construction for the Constitution. So rules of construction are given to us specifically in the Bill of Rights. In the preamble to the Bill of Rights, it says, in order to prevent misconstruction and abuse. In other words, to make sure you're properly reading the Constitution, they've agreed to create the Bill of Rights. And the 10th Amendment is the most important part. 9th Amendment too, really, honestly. 10th Amendment says that there are powers reserved to the federal government, that there are powers prohibited to the states, and if power doesn't fall under either one of those two categories, then it's reserved to the states or to the people. Okay? So that seems to right off the bat tell me we're not talking about states' rights, we're not talking about federal supremacy. We're talking about, does it fall under federal powers or prohibitions to the states? If not, then it's to the states. But I think we're going to find out that it falls under federal powers. It's reserved to the federal government. If it is, and the federal government exercises those powers according to what the Constitution permits, we have to remember Article 6, Clause 2. When there's a conflict between state laws and federal laws that actually exercise the powers granted in the Constitution according to the processes permitted in the Constitution. In other words, therefore, the officers that are granted those powers and the procedures to exercise those powers. In other words, Article 1, Section 7, perhaps, most likely Article 1, Section 7. Then that's it. It's the supreme law of the land. This isn't states' rights. It's not federal supremacy. It's figuring out what was divided over to who. This is literally the second principle in defending our divinely inspired Constitution by Dallin H. Oaks. The division of powers between the federal government and the states. It's not federal supremacy. It's not states' rights. It's just what's where. Once we establish that, whatsoever more or less comes of evil. If we take that which was given to the federal government and say, no, you can't have it anymore, right? We want to stay in the Union. We've been admitted to the Union, but we don't want to let you have that anymore. We're not going to amend the Constitution either. We're just going to prohibit you from doing that which is a power reserved to you in the first place. That's less than the Constitution permits. And if we say, okay, it's not reserved to the federal government, but they're going to do it anyhow, that's more than the Constitution permits. Either way, it comes of evil. So let's see. Preamble establishes the purposes of the Constitution. It says it's for ourselves and our posterity that it's preserving the blessings of liberty. For ourselves and our posterity. Okay, so priority number one, the citizens, the sovereign, the actual sovereign is priority number one. Then Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 is the Uniform Rules of Naturalization Clause. Congress has the power to establish those. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 has a prohibition, but with an implied power that they have after a certain date. After 1808, they have the power to control immigration. Okay? Prior to that, they don't. So that's already 4 spots. And then Article 4, Section 4, says the United States shall protect the states from invasion. Is immigration invasion? Let's think here. Has demographic subversion been used prior to the Founding Fathers? Yes, a lot. They knew about it. They knew exactly what it was. Therefore, the meaning of the word invasion at the time the document came into legal effect would have included all the tactics that they were familiar with, which would have been demographic subversion. Or in other words, the immigration of people gradually into a region, setting up then a loyalist control from an outside nation to control the new territory. Okay? This is important to understand. So even Article 4, Section 4, it's not just about your traditional military invasions, but it's about some of those sneakier tactics that militaries had been known to use well before the Founding Fathers. And the Founding Fathers knew about it, and they even made laws addressing those kind of things in the early days of the nation. Control of immigration, removal of people who entered here illegally, all those things are clearly reserved to the federal government, not ambiguously at all. Now, I just pointed to what, 5 spots? Preamble, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1, Article 4, Section 4. I guess that's only 4 spots. I promise I can count you guys. Okay, whatsoever more or less comes of evil. If you take that power away from the federal government without amending the Constitution or without exiting the Union, you remain admitted to the Union, but you don't accept their power over that. That's less than the Constitution calls for. If the federal government were to exercise that power when it wasn't reserved to them, that would be more than the Constitution calls for. However, it's not more than the Constitution calls for. Do I believe that we are possibly violating the laws of nature and nature's God or eternal laws by controlling the borders too much? Very possibly. It seems to be based on some things that I've heard President Oaks say, in particular in a Christmas devotional a few years back. What's the problem? We've got all sorts of other unconstitutional things we're doing that makes it unsustainable. And to top it off, there really is a potential subversion situation going on. So, do we trust the Commander-in-Chief to do his job because he's the one that was part of the more perfect union that was formed? He's the one who's supposed to communicate to Congress from time to time the needs for the Union. He's the one that's supposed to be, that's what was missing in the Articles of Confederation. We're counting on him to get the right information and also to deal with his take care clause. Take care that the laws of the Union are faithfully executed. Laws have been written according to the powers granted. As long as he's exercising those laws, Article 6, Clause 2, as long as it's pursuant to the Constitution, it is the supreme law of the land.